All right, everyone, welcome. It is Tuesday, April 16th, 2024, and we're here for the monthly agenda-setting session of the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission. We have several opportunities for public input that I'll discuss in just a little bit, but we'll go ahead and begin with the clerk calling the roll for us.
Here.
Here. Tyler. Here. Wright. Fisher.
Here.
Gould.
Here.
Culpepper.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Norton. Hamby.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, and we'll proceed with the civility pledge provided to us by the Georgia Municipal Association, which indicates that the way we govern ourselves is often as important as the positions we take. Our collective decisions will be better when differing views have had the opportunity to be fully vetted and considered. And all people have the right to be treated with respect, courtesy, and openness. We value all input, and we commit to conduct ourselves at times with civility and courtesy to one another. And we have a very special treat tonight, so I'm going to come down to next to the clerk here for a moment. All right, we're really grateful because, of course, we live in a community that's really full of vibrant and creative folks. And so just a few years ago, we inaugurated a Poet Laureate as a standing position for Athens-Clarke County. Our first Poet Laureate's term has ended, and I am really blessed tonight to be able to introduce our new Poet Laureate. And this program seeks to promote literacy and to further enhance the profile of poets, poetry, and literary arts in our community. So our new Poet Laureate, I'm going to call up right now, and it's Mikhayla Robinson Smith. She's a poet, an author, a spoken word artist, and an essayist. And Mikhayla is a graduate of the English program at the University of Georgia and is right now a first grade teacher at Whit Davis Elementary School right here in Clarke County. As Poet Laureate, she will make several guest appearances throughout her term promoting poetry here in Athens. So Mikhayla, I would like to turn the podium over to you so you could introduce some words of wisdom.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here. As Mayor Gertz said, I came here for college and I never left. I'm excited to be a part of Athens. I feel so welcome here. And I wrote a poem just for this occasion that kind of goes through my journey of how I came from Augusta and now in Athens, how I found my way. So this is called In Our City. In the face of our city, in the face of our people, I become enamored with the spirit of it all. I am in love with the quiet bustle and hum of the morning, the farmer's market echoing with beautiful food and people, downtown a heartbeat, bringing many worlds together. Athens, a place of divine collision where we are meant to be here with one another, to uplift one another, and even in the face of beauty, in the face of love, in the constant thrum of life, we cannot deny the cracks, those that hunger in the cold, quiet nights, the silent separations, the scream of those without, the knowing that it could be any of us in a second. To love our city is to know it in all of its forms, in all of its communities and fallacies. To love is to know the truth. To love is to fight the good fight. To live in the light and to defeat the darkness. To nurture the children. To water the seeds. To mother the wounds, to be in arm's reach of one another, to stand a city. The foundation must outlast the brokenness. Our love for one another must withstand the test of time. In our city, we become a wave of change, an ocean for the people, by the people, an unwavering, unshaken faith that survived destroyed neighborhoods, that became champions in the last hour. In our city, held together by the people who call it home. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right. We stand in awe and wonder that Mikhayla has been willing to bless us with her work as Poet Laureate of Athens-Clarke County. So we're so glad to have you here tonight. Thank you so much. All right, we are going to move on to our formal business of the evening. I will tell you we're going to have two opportunities for public input, and both opportunities follow the same pattern. The first opportunity will be on the consent agenda, which will be established formally in just a moment, and then we'll have a second opportunity on old and new business. And at both opportunities for public input, there's a 3-minute opportunity for any member of the public to speak to us tonight. There's a light in front of Clerk Spratlin that will turn green when you begin speaking, yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and red the moment that 3 minutes has passed. And I will ask you to take a seat. And for everybody else who's not speaking, I just ask you to listen attentively and then let the next speaker move on without acclamation or opposition because we want to hear every word that's said. I do need to establish the items on the consent agenda, and so I'd like to begin by asking commissioners, is there any item that's currently on the consent agenda that you would like to move to new business for discussion?
I've got some.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, 1, 3, 5, and then 7, 8, 9 for just a quick comment.
Just number 6 is for a brief comment.
And 6, Commissioner Davenport?
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor?
Number 17.
17's on discussion. We're good.
Oh, Lord, excuse me.
Anything else to move from consent to discussion? All right, so members of the public, that leaves 2 and 6 on the consent agenda. So would any member of the public tonight like to come speak to us about items 2 or item 6?
Mr. Mayor, I think 6 was removed by Commissioner Davenport.
Yeah, Davenport, yeah,
4
moved up, yes.
remains.
Oh, 4 remains. Oh, thank you. I miscircled 4 rather than 6. So would anyone like to speak to 2 or 4? All right, hearing none, we are going to move on. So on discussion, we have items 1, 3, and then 5 through 28. So if anybody would like to speak to us tonight about any of those, 1, 3, or 5 through 28, now is that time. Yep, 1, 3, or 5 to 28. Yep, so those items that were removed from consent, old business and new business. And so just give us your name, place of residence, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
Hi, my name is Lori Duke. I live at 419 Millage Terrace, Athens, Georgia. I would like to thank the Legislative Review Committee on their work in developing modifications on the Code of Ordinances to address additional invasive plant species. This issue not only affects quality of life, but also is imperative for property owners to be able to protect the extensive financial investments made in their initial property acquisitions and subsequent property renovations and improvements. The proposed language incorporates the use of the Georgia Invasive Species Council invasive plant list, which will greatly facilitate the functionality of the current code ordinances and associated code enforcement efforts. Of note, other communities within Georgia, such as Brookhaven, have added the list within their code ordinances. As written, this proposed ordinance will address bamboo, which is a significant property encroachment issue throughout the county. There's been a pervasive bamboo issue affecting a number of properties on Millage Terrace and Millage Heights. Without the ability to use our current county code ordinances, the issue has continued to progress over the last several years and has led to the spread of bamboo to neighboring properties with additional threat of spread to other adjacent properties. In some instances, the bamboo growth has begun to affect integrity of buildings and fences and has also begun to grow on property dwellings, which can lead and impact the foundation integrity. In addition, wildlife has resided in the highly affected areas, which has led to other issues. Without passage of the measure, property owners will be left with no option in the current code to protect their property investment. The only options left will be to resort to drastic measures such as digging 3 to 4 foot trenches around their property, utilizing dirt exchanges, and pouring cement, which still may not be sufficient to prevent the spread of bamboo and other invasive plants on their property. This, of course, would come at significant cost to those trying to protect their property and would negatively impact the usability of the property in the future. In closing, I would like to thank the Legislative Review Committee for their work and urge support for passage of the proposed modifications.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate it. Would anyone else like to speak to any item on the agenda tonight other than items 2 or 4? Good evening.
Good evening. Hello. My name is Bradley Hebacher. I'm speaking on behalf of the YWCO, 562 Research Drive, Athens, Georgia. Ready? Mayor Gertz, City Councilman, thank you for the time. Tonight I am joined by several members of the Board of Directors with the YWCO and several staff members. And, sorry, pardon me. And basically, we are here to ask you for your support for funding from the CDBG grant. First, a little history lesson. The YWCO was originally established in 1906. On June 26th of this year, we'll celebrate our 118th birthday. We're located in East Athens on Research Drive, and essentially we're a fitness center for young families and people who nurture themselves with physical fitness, but we also support senior community involvement, and a lot of seniors spend much time at our facility. In 1976, we were approached by the Department of Family and Child Services to provide a summer camp for young girls from low-income families. They were seeking a safe summer recreational experience. We estimated there were going to be 35 girls that summer, and 135 girls showed up. Fast forward 46 years, we've had the YWCU Girls Club for every year since 1976, with the exception of 2020 when COVID. 2021, our program was shortened, but we still did host the program. Our program has evolved. It was primarily a recreational program, and now we incorporate literacy and early education, reading, and other art and physical education. It is a camp, very much like a normal summer camp, but we do emphasize the literacy as well. We have received CDBG funding for many years, dating back to 2013, 2015, 2016, 2017. We were approved in 2020, but we did not hold our camp. In 2021, we had a limited camp. Prior to CBG funding, Clarke County government provided monetary support for our program. And for over 30 years, United Way now has provided monetary funding for our summer program. Long-term partners of our program, Clarke County School System. We've used their facilities for over 30 years. Athens-Clarke County provides our summer lunch program and buses for our out-of-town field trips.
Thank you, Mr. Hebacher. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Shanice Allen, and I reside at 130 Meredith Ridge Road. Tonight, I stand before you as a proud board member of the YWCO. For over 47 years, our Girls Club program has been a cornerstone of our community, nurturing and empowering over 10,000 young girls. Our program serves as a beacon of hope for families, particularly during the summer months, offering enriching activities that shape the lives of our girls. In 2023, our Girls Club welcomed 134 girls aged 5 to 12 years old, reflecting the beautiful diversity of our community, with 82% African American, 8% Caucasian, 5% Hispanic, 4% multiracial, and 1% identified as other. It's important to note that our campers predominantly hail from low to moderate income families, with over 50% receiving financial assistance last year. We are committed to ensuring that no girl is turned away due to financial constraints, extending full scholarships to those in need, including campers from Athens Housing Authority, Athens Homeless Shelter, Pinewood Trailer Park, Project Safe, and others. The impact of our program on the lives of these girls is tangible and profound. We've witnessed successful stories firsthand, with graduates now serving leadership roles in and outside of our community. Our summer initiatives equip girls ages 5 to 12 with the essential tools and experiences crucial for academic success and personal growth. Our curriculum encompasses a diverse range of activities aimed at holistic development. Some include reading lessons facilitated by certified teachers alongside our Drop Everything and Read to Me program, puppetry art workshops, interactive neighborhood for kids, weekly Girl Scout sessions, swim lessons for 7-year-olds, and engaging field trips to diverse locations such as the Atlanta Newsroom, bowling alleys, movies, splash pads, nature trails, and more. It's disheartening to learn that our Girls Club program was not recommended for the CDBG funding for FY25 this year. I implore you to explore alternative avenues to support community programs that have been pillars of stability for decades. As my associate pastor eloquently stated in Sunday service, not all new endeavors are beneficial, and not all long-standing traditions are outdated. Thank you for considering alternative funding mechanisms to sustain our Girls Club program and continue impacting the lives of young girls in our community positively. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Would anyone else like to speak to any of the items other than 2 and 4 that are on our agenda tonight? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Richard, for those who don't know, Richard Dunn. I live at 252 Cavalier Road. Most people call me Rick, and I'm going to speak to 2 things, because one I didn't know was on the agenda, so I want to speak to the extension of nonprofit leases for FY25. I'm a member of the Taylor Grady Landmark Commons Board, and it would be a blessing to us if you all would pass this extension of a $1 per year lease. It would be a tremendous blessing to us in terms of our financial abilities. But I'm here to speak on behalf of the Athens-Clarke County High School Completion Initiative, the nonprofit organization that I work for, in support of getting CDBG funding for our Education Matters Youth Reporters program. This is an after-school program that we run at 3 schools in Clarke County, J.J. Harris Elementary, Bernie Harris Lyons Middle, and Coyle Middle Schools. The kids think we're there to teach them how to be journalists. We're actually there to teach them how to be better readers and writers. We use the building blocks of journalism, which is teaching them the who, what, why, when, where, and how of journalism, and apply it to reading and writing. So every day when we meet with them, we practice those skills, get them to writing, get them to reading. It has been a successful program, we like to think. We tested it last year at Bernie Harris Lyons Middle School, and 70% of the kids in our program improved in their reading scores on the state standardized test, the I-Ready test. One kid who was in the 6th grade and read on the 3rd grade level improved his scores by 115 points. What we would like to do with the funding that you all will provide us is pair it with another grant that we got and double the number of schools that we serve in Clarke County. So we would appreciate a positive vote for that funding, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to any of the items on tonight's agenda other than 2 and 4? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Deanne Rosso. My business is located at 190 Hawthorne Park in Athens, Elevate Wealth Advisory. I'm also the board chair this year of the YWCO on the east side of Athens, and I'm here tonight to advocate for CDBG funding for the YWCO Girls Club. I wanted to share with you, Mayor and Council members, about some of the changes in the Girls Program Girls Club program this year. We're changing our location. For many, many years, we've held this program at the Betty Henderson Holston Elementary School, but this year we're moving that at the recommendation of Athens-Clarke County Schools to Fowler Drive Elementary, which we think is going to be a fantastic move for our program as far as opening up those doors to another set of girls who may not have attended this program before, or who have had transportation issues to get to the location before. So we think this is going to be a fantastic change. Dr. Pam Garcia, principal at Fowler Drive, is very supportive and excited, and she's appreciative of us helping her children with the summer gap learning and for summer recreation opportunities. We also anticipate that the location change will increase the number of girls that can attend our program this year, which would mean needing the additional funding to support that program this summer. This program gives girls the tools and experiences to do well in school and to succeed in life. We have reading lessons for all campers with certified teachers. The DEAR, the Drop Everything and Read to Me program, which increases their vocabulary and inspires a love of reading, as well as helping with that summer slide that we know is so important for young students at their age. There's also been a leadership change of the leadership of the girls program. Rudine Bellamy, who's retired, will roll over after 25 years of service, but she'll still be involved with the program this year and will be assistant to our new leadership team. And our new leadership team is with Shonda Foote and Jamette Perry, who are going to be our co-directors, and they are both with Athens-Clarke County Schools. And so we just ask again that you reconsider or consider funding the YWCO Girls Program for CDBG funding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Rosso. Is there anyone else here to speak this evening? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Alicia Battle, 1611 Linton Way. So for two reasons I'm here. I work for Goodwill in North Georgia. I appreciate all of you for supporting us on our micro-entrepreneurship program. We are also seeking CDBG funding. But tonight, I'm actually here as a board member for the past 5 years for the Athens YWCO, and in particular the Girls Club. I want to say two things because I think everyone said really what you need to hear, but most importantly is the women or the young women who we are assisting at the Girls Club, the future of those women, that's what we need to talk about, and how they're all going to be breaking the glass ceiling in this community. We are really helping future leaders. I can promise you that if we walked around the room, several of your leaders in here were also impacted by the YWCO Girls Club. So I'd ask for any discretional funding that is available for this program. It is much needed. As we mentioned, you've got transportation. The exposure that these young ladies are getting is just, it's invaluable. Some of them may not leave out of Athens-Clarke County, but in this program, they have the opportunity to do so. And I think and know that with our future leaders, we have got to create continue programs such as the YWCO Girls Club. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Battle. Is there anyone else here to speak this evening?
That's a different program.
I'm Kitty Myron. I live at 195 Pendleton Drive here in Athens. And I'm retired as the CEO of the YWCO, and I'm currently on the Y board. And tonight I'm asking you to please add the YWCO Girls Club to the CDBG Public Services funding for 2024 through 25. I know one of the issues that's facing Clarke County today is gang violence. And recently I came across a book called Changing Course: Preventing Gang Membership. It's put out by the CDC and the National Institute of Justice, and it's based on evidence-based principles that can stop the impact of gangs on our youth, families, and communities. One statement from the book that really struck me was this: a 13-year-old does not wake up one morning and suddenly out of the blue decide to join a gang. This decision has been developing over a long time. The book goes on to say that during the elementary school years, ages 6 to 12, two of the most important risk factors are negative relationship with peers and poor school performance, such as children who have fallen behind in school because they cannot read. You've probably heard the research that has shown that children who are not reading on grade level by the end of third grade are at risk from everything from dropping out of school to teen pregnancy to prison to early death even. Did you know that in 2023, only 29% of Clarke County School District third graders scored proficient or higher on the milestones test? The book that's mentioned above also states that girls are more likely to seek safety and security by joining gangs, but gangs are not a good place for protection for those girls. Preventing gang joining should focus on helping girls stay in school and avoid substance abuse and abusive boyfriends. At Girls Club, everything we do is to help our girls to do well in school, to have experiences that show them opportunities in a broader world, and to help them to learn to make friends and get along with others. With daily reading lessons, our Dear to Me program, and sending home books to our campers to keep, we help girls do better in school. By bringing in the ACC Police Department to talk about bullying and drug abuse, we help them learn to make better choices. With the cottage, we teach the girls about healthy relationships. Our goal is for girls to graduate from school, to continue their education, to get good jobs, and become productive members of our community. Girls Club has made a difference in the lives of thousands of girls over 47 years. I hope you can find help with funding for Girls Club this year.
Thank you, Ms. Myron. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to us tonight? All right, we're going to go ahead and move to discussion, and we'll begin with item 1. Commissioner Link, this is the calendar year 24 Pavement Maintenance Program. You asked that this be up for discussion.
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that this is where a lot of our neighborhood streets get repaved, and this is also an opportunity to do some restriping for potential traffic calming, potential even 3-laning or road dieting. So I'd like to keep this particular item off the agenda to just allow my fellow commissioners to take a look, and if they have any inquiries, and maybe the manager has some input on that.
Manager Williams?
Only to agree and offer that we are still awaiting the price from the contractor, so it would be appropriate for it not to be on the consent agenda.
Okay,
Thank you,
good, yeah.
Commissioner Link.
Yeah, and item 3, I guess is just tangentially related to that. I'm happy to see that go back on.
I just want to see, does anyone else have a comment on item 1? All right, so we'll move on to 3, and you asked for
That's
discussion as well.
the state funding that would fund this, so I'm happy to see that go back on.
Any other input on 3? These are the LMIG dollars that flow from Atlanta to us. Everybody okay with that back on consent? Okay. And then, Commissioner Link, you also mentioned item 5. This is a public utilities easement across 375 Satula Avenue, what people typically think of as the Unified Government Satula property, so that water and sewer could be accessed for Kessler Drive, which is right behind there.
Yeah, I'm happy to see this coming forward. I know that I've had some constituents concerned about it for a while. Just have a quick question for the manager. Was there some concern about Kessler Drive access possibly being inhibited at some point, like the actual street? It's an unpaved street that does access some private residential parcels. Is there any issue there?
I don't believe so. I think this mostly has to do with the easements for the water and sewer.
So it's strictly water and sewer easements. There's no danger of that access to those properties being actually county property.
Commissioner, I engaged with a few residents of Kessler over the years, and I know the attorney's office has kind of looked at the question of vehicular access to.
Yeah,
I don't know, Attorney Drake, if you wanted to.
There was concern expressed. We believe that there should not be a concern. It's currently classified as a private street.
Okay.
I think there may have been some desire for us to accept it as a public street, but staff, I don't think was open to that because there's a lot of private streets we have and might open up maintenance concerns for us. But there's no issue related to, I acknowledged to their legal counsel, we acknowledged that there was the private street there. I think there was a concern that at some point down the road, we might try to close it, But there was a plat that I shared with them that showed that private street, so I don't think we would have the authority to do that,
Okay, I know that there was that concern
Yeah.
in case, in the future, we might
Yeah.
unload this property, that could be a concern. Yeah, I just wanted to double check that. I'm happy for this item to go back on the agenda as well.
Any,
Attorney Gray said another way, that private street has its own plat. I mean, it's protected. It's not part of our property
Okay.
necessarily, so.
That's good to know.
So this is to clean up the water and sewer
Yeah.
easements, and I want to recognize the Attorney's Office for all their work on this, too.
Thank you, Judd.
any other questions about that? Everybody okay with that on consent? All right, we're going to move on to item 6. Commissioner Davenport, this is an extension of the nonprofit leases for the duration of FY24, so, or FY25, excuse me, so this would last until June 30th, 2025.
Yes. Kicking this can down the road again. So, yeah, GOC is burdened with a lot of obligations right now. We have not forgot about our nonprofit leases, but I do want to notify that our lessees that the dollar rent is being advised by our attorney office that it can no longer exist. So please, if you guys come to us and talk to us about increasing your rent or something that's feasible, and I'll be reaching out to y'all, to GOC as well as to some of the lessees in July. But you still got a year. GOC is committed to finding something equitable.
Thanks for all the work
I'll put it
on
on
this.
consent too.
As I read the history, I thought, God, I didn't know that I had a foot that could kick a can 6 years down the road, but lo and behold, it has come to pass. Everybody okay with this on consent? Okay. All right. Commissioner Link, you asked for 7, and this is one of the 3 congressionally directed spending
Yes.
requests from staff.
I just wanted the opportunity to acknowledge our Democratic Senators, Ossoff and Warnock, for directing this spending towards our public safety department, towards our police officers, for equipment, protective equipment, communications equipment, and some salary enhancement, retention bonuses. So I'm really grateful that we have that leadership in Washington to allow our officers to be properly compensated and protected and to increase public safety in our community.
And of course, these are all requests, so, we would first have to see what passes Congress and then gain the funds after. So this is kind of the first of several steps.
All right, well, this is the opportunity for folks to reach out to our senators and ask them to approve our request.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, Mayor, is this only for ACCPD, or does that extend to our sheriff's department? Because I have not read the verbiage.
7 and 8 are for the police, and number 9 is submitted by the sheriff's office.
Okay.
To deal with recruitment and retention, which has been his consistent priority.
Okay, thank you.
And we are also looking at other avenues to help bolster recruitment for sure for the sheriff's office.
Commissioner Myers, did I see your hand up?
No.
No.
I'm happy to see these.
Everybody
go
okay
back.
with 7, 8, 9 on consent? All right. All right, moving on to old business item 10. This is the fiscal year 25 Community Partnerships Program that would direct about $550,000 to community nonprofits. I know there were questions about this last time and the desire to spend a little bit more time on this. I don't know if commissioners want to provide any input now on prospective pathways forward, but by all means, now is that time. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, Commissioner Fisher and Hool and I just met to talk a little bit more about this, and I surmise there'll be a CDO coming forward. Commissioner, does either of y'all want to, any input?
Go ahead.
Commissioner Hool?
Sure, yeah, I think, so appreciate Commissioner Lincoln, Commissioner Fisher meeting and collaborating on this. We're planning to bring forward a CDO that basically does what we discussed in the past meeting. It's going to recommend that we use unallocated fund balance to fund the 3 programs that are either underfunded or not recommended for funding in this, that have been funded by ACC Gov in this fiscal year. The rationale here being that this is a new way of us moving from the old way of funding things to the new way of funding things. And so we don't want to just kind of suddenly drop the ball on organizations that we've been partnering with for years. But we'll certainly need to follow up this action with some discussion around our budget about how much we want to fund the community partnership program in FY25 and thereafter.
Yeah, and I think we want to be consistent moving forward. So when other commissioners are here, or some new commissioners are here, at least we want to be consistent. If we're funding those programs, we'd like to fund at least to the same level moving forward each year as we review based on budget and stuff, what we're looking at. So, yeah.
Any further input on this?
All right. I'm going to ask a question.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Culpepper.
is that an option for other organizations that are not receiving funding from, like the HCBD grant, like for the YWCO, stuff like that? Would they be eligible for something in this?
So there was an application process for this. And
Okay,
so,
okay.
yeah. And so you see those folks who did apply, but who may not have been funded through this. So. Any further input on this? All right. We'll leave this off consent. We anticipate a CDO. All right. Moving on to new business. Item 11 is a revised site selection criteria that you see in the chart for fire station replacement. Any input on this item?
Yeah, I have.
Mr. Myers?
I have some input on this. I just want to urge I want to talk more with Commissioner Davenport over there on the east side with me. I'm chairing the site selection committee for this project, and this is our second time through, and as we learned at the last voting meeting, so much happened that meeting, but in there, we had some movement of SPLOST management money for the new site selection process, and that was $50,000, if we all remember. So we are investing in this process a second time, and I'm very concerned that we do not, we don't have an endless Groundhog Day on this with this firehouse. If you look at the criteria, they're coming from the, the fire chief and is talking to us. There's been some very slight changes in the criteria for the site selection. So this is back at the beginning where you go and you pick up all the criteria and then sift through all the properties in that area. Right now, it's important to note that the area is exactly the same as the last time. And I will tell you that from having read over the comments that we got, and speaking with some people when I participated in like about half of that public input, I had to get off to something else. I think Commissioner Davenport and I were both there for about an hour. That there is I think there's a disconnect between what the neighbors and the people in the area see and what the fire department is talking to us about emergency response service. And there's questioning about the validity of our professional fire department's evaluation tools and techniques. So I think it's really important that we look at this carefully. I know sometimes at this point with the site selection where we're just looking at the criteria, it's easier to just pass it down the road. And then when we get to the final thing with the sites, that's when everyone comes out and we all react to that. So I urge my colleagues here to look at this carefully and think about what we're doing as we move forward here. And I will be meeting and talking more with my East Side colleague, Commissioner Davenport.
Yes, leave off consent, please.
We'll leave it off consent.
Yeah, leave it off consent.
I'll just say for the record, I do want to see this process bear fruit. You know, what we are talking about is, saving people's lives. And that there's a very clear analytical tool that's used from San Francisco to Maine to Miami, and we're using that same tool here. So I think there's every reason to believe that we can find a way to put people in better stead when it comes to emergency response. All right, moving on to 11, and this is SPLOST 2020, Project 11, Subproject 8, LED lighting retrofits. Any burning thoughts about this item?
Just one question. So the operational cost is 79, and that's in the red. So it's gonna cost more? I thought it's gonna save it.
Less.
I'm not a budget guy. Can you
That's the
explain?
savings.
Okay.
After
there
the
we go.
project's complete in energy.
Can we put this on consent?
Yes.
Everybody okay with this on consent?
Yeah.
Yes.
And Mayor, if I might, just
Yeah,
while we're
please.
here, so, and part of this too is a signaling that we'd like to use some of those savings to help pay for a future position that will come back to you, so. Well, actually, no, you would be, I'm sorry, let me check that again. Yeah, that will come back to you later.
And you might remember that as part of this broader package through the SPLOST 2020 program, it was anticipated at the time that we would have about $1 million of annual savings in operational costs. So this is a piece of that. Very exciting. All right, moving on to item 13. This is another SPLOST 2020 Project 11 sub-project, and this is the metered equipment electrification initiative. And you see in there the grid through which staff determined which equipment they wanted to prioritize for electrification, moving away from diesel and other fuels.
Hopefully consent.
Consent?
Consent okay with this?
Yes.
All right. Item 14 is a different SPLOST 2020 project. This is the airport capital improvement. This is a parking lot, and you can read in the narrative that airport staff had great engagement with some airlines at the annual airline engagement conference, and that among the things that the airlines noted is that they would need a greater bulk of parking dedicated to consistent air service. And so this is summarized here. Any further? Commissioner Myers?
Well, it's just airport-related. While we're here, I asked Manager Williams, I had someone reach out to me and send me a long message about the need for more, I guess it's, what do we call it? You know, like parking, I don't know, dorm rooms for planes. What do we call those things? Hangars, thank you. Thank you. And how that would pay for itself as well. So I'm going to make sure to send that to you because sort of left it in my messages. And maybe that's, you like that, dorm rooms for planes?
I was just like, did she say dorm rooms for
For
airplanes?
planes, right, yeah. Hangars, right. So I'm going to forward that to you on that as well.
All right. Is this okay for
Hangars, that's
consent?
right.
Yes.
And just
Manager
while we're
Williams?
there, and I appreciate that sentiment, I do want to say, just for the public's benefit, that within my time here, the airport has weaned itself off of general fund support, and from an operating standpoint, is able to generate its own fees. So that, those land leases and the hangars are certainly a way to further that. There is some assistance from SPLOST, obviously, on this type of thing, sometimes some general fund capital, but the airport is operating well.
Yeah, yes, and my intel tells me that those hangars in big demand for them.
And if I could, Commissioner, I'm sorry to belabor this. So
Yeah.
there are the big hangars, and then there's the T hangars. So the T hangars are smaller hangars that are just big enough for the plane, not the big ones. And we are 100% leased out on T hangars, and I believe that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
And there are, it is something that it's a business venture where you're leasing space to others, and so we'll have to, build these things, and then the revenue comes back, and so we can come back to you with a plan around that.
How much space is available? How many more hangars can you build?
I need to find that out, but there is space on the field for it. We've talked about it for several years. It's just one of those priorities.
that's a
We've been
great
focused on
stream.
all the infrastructure of late.
All right. That's okay for consent?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Moving on to another airport item. This is number 15. This is Taxiway B pavement rehabilitation and lighting. And we benefit from some state and federal funds with many of these programs too.
Consent?
Consent okay there?
Is that a grant that we're trying to get, Mayor, or we already got the funding?
We've got some SPLOST funding, and I think there's some match funding as well.
Okay.
Well, so if I might, both projects for the airport would be set, the construction is 75% funded by the FAA.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the parking lots, we're waiting on the state We don't have that award yet, but we're going to go ahead and get the design done, which is always 100% local, and we're going to be ready for that. And this other one, we do have an indication that we can get funding for that. And again, we're going to do this concept and start to advance that. But both projects are part of the capital improvement program for the airport.
All right. On the other side of the community, a different transportation program is the SPLOST 2018 transit facility improvements. And this is the proposed project concept for the transit facility at the mall redevelopment. You might remember that as part of finalizing that community benefits plan, we needed to move forward with a concept for this to make sure that the long-term leaseholder on that property was satisfied given the terms of their lease. So, Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I recall that well. This is one of the most important parts of the CBA, I would say, and an essential component of us alleviating the traffic problems on Atlanta Highway and advancing the transit plan for the county as a whole. I am curious if staff can clarify, if not now, then maybe in a staff report, where we're at in terms of the developer having fully satisfied all the provisions of the CBA, because I know we've extended twice, and here we are now with this before us. Does this imply that they've finally checked those boxes, or are we still waiting on some things from them?
Well, we can certainly summarize that. I'll just remind everybody, and I noted today in rereading all the agenda items, this probably should have been a history item, but back in, I believe it was December, the commission voted for a 6-month extension for this very purpose, and we were supposed to return with this concept for the transit facility due to a tenant wanting some assurance that whatever we're going to build is not going to interfere with their operations, which is totally understandable. This has been a pause for this particular project. We can follow up with where we are in various points in the agreement. I also want to point out, too, that there were concessions made on both sides that I think is better for both sides. The main thing for the government is that the developer agreed to take our stormwater off-site. And what that means is it's a small site, right? And if we had to do our own stormwater, then we would have to put it underground. Probably would have been $500,000 or $800,000 more than we're going to end up paying for this. And whereas it wasn't as big a deal for the system that's already going to be built for the developer, for us to be a part of that. Now we'll have some water quality perhaps to take care of. And our concession for that was the tenant in question wanted to be visible from the street, so we've agreed not to go more than one story, and I think that's okay. And we've looked at the potential, obviously the use for the bus system. Maybe we'll have a little retail outlet or something like that in there for folks that are coming to the, so we've made allowances for that. So that was a concession that's in this that both sides were happy with, and I just want to let y'all know about that. And then, of course, this concept awaits your consideration, and the follow-on, if you approve this, then we'll amend the CBA accordingly, and that will come back to you for a June vote to finalize this whole chapter of what we're doing.
And that CBA amendment is still going to keep the end dates the same, right? We're not expecting those to change, the completion dates that are built into it?
I don't have any information to the contrary, but I don't know.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I guess if there's a way that staff can maybe add some of that history into the final agenda item, that'd be great.
Sure.
Appreciate you. I guess, well, I'm happy with this on consent, I guess, as long as staff is happy putting that stuff in the agenda item.
Any further input on this side? All right, I'm going to move this to consent. All right, item 17, of course, we spoke about in the work session, and this is the East Downtown TAD Advisory Committee Community Identified Priority List. And of course, what this would do is just accept that. And this wouldn't direct funds toward any project. Of course, there's lots of discussion in the work session about prospectively what projects may ultimately be funded, but that would be a different set of decisions down the road. So, input on this one?
Yeah. We did talk about this in agenda setting or a work session last week. And I did make the comment about the affordable housing goals. And so just going forward for FYI, I will be asking to modify A and B because we have apartments already. So home ownership should be the first goal. I'll also be asking for modification on townhomes and tiny houses. But we'll be accepting the rest of the priority list.
All right.
I just want to make everyone aware of what we will be asking for
So we
when it
should-
comes to so keep it on consent,
Keep
but
it
just for the room, just so it's not a surprise.
Any further input on this side?
And if I could,
Yes.
go ahead, please.
So you want to keep it on, you want to put it on?
We're going to keep it on consent.
It's off
On
consent.
Oh, it's off consent. Okay, we'll put it
Yeah.
on consent.
On consent?
Okay, yeah.
If you want to modify anything that's here, you would want to keep it on discussion.
Okay.
Which is where it is
So
right now.
maybe we should
Thank
keep
you.
it off. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Manager Williams, did you have any follow-up?
Well, just while we're all, of course, there have been a couple of TAD conversations we were propelled in before we really had the opportunity to work with the TAD Advisory Committee and understand what the needs of the community were. But going back to the original redevelopment plans, the idea was to let folks help translate the needs of that particular district and amplify that to the commission for priorities. Not only to you and the public, but also to future developers to know what's important there so that they can. So this is the first of process that we expect across all the TAD advisory committees. So,
I think there are two others that are sort of midstream here, Newton Bridge and Lexington, if I recall. So you'll be seeing similar agenda reports for those two areas come forward.
Attorney Drake, I hope I didn't misspeak on that. Okay.
All right, we're going to move on. Item 18 is adoption of our revised strategic plan. We, of course, are kind of heading into the last year of our current strategic plan, and we'll be doing a bigger scale refresh beginning late this summer, early this autumn. I know there was some discussion in our earlier work session about prospective language changes that we would want to embody here. Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to check. The impression I got from the discussion in the work session was that people were agreeable to keeping the language as is for Goal Area 1, Strategy B, which is the one about proactively reforming systems of accountability. So I guess I'm just checking in to see, is a motion in order to make that happen, or was it just an error to not update that language yet, or do we have to leave this off to make a CDO about 3 words? I'm just trying to make sense of
I think technically,
procedurally.
if you want any modification from the language that's here, that'd be a CDO,
Okay.
even if it's just 3 words.
Mr. Mayor, would it be in order, in your opinion, to just make a motion to tweak the language? I mean, it's actually keeping the language as it currently is in our strategic plan, rather than changing it as is proposed in this agenda item.
So
And that change would be having it say the jail and supervised population, rather than jail recidivism rates, noting, as I did at the work session, that that encapsulates recidivism and other things. So.
No, and I'm certainly supportive conceptually of that direction, but I think we would just want to do a formal strike through.
Okay, so I should work on a CDO for that?
Well, I mean, what I'd like to offer, I know that seems ridiculous, but where does a CDO start and stop from what the recommendation is? And do we start to try and wordsmith from the dais during the meetings? I know it seems small, but the mayor's correct in that, there's a staff recommendation, and any changes to it, the commission can make in full view of the public, through a CDO process.
I mean, can we also just pass a motion tonight, if people are agreeable, to drop it, rather than having to go through that whole process? We have a quorum.
So given that this is an agenda-setting meeting,
You have to.
I think that may take a special called session, which we haven't advertised, but I'd let Attorney Drake weigh in to make sure that I'm not getting over my skis around parliamentary procedure.
Well, our custom here is that our agenda set meetings, we don't take action. So if we want to follow our custom, I say we do it as part of the regular meeting.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
under
I'd be happy
Georgia
to
law,
co-sign with that language.
it feels onerous to go through a whole CDO process, but I guess I will offer that up. I would ask if anyone has concerns about it to raise them up now, so we can address those, otherwise hopefully.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yes, I kind of agree with Manager Williams, though. The staff has said and put all this together, and, we're going to wordsmith everything. Maybe, I don't know, should we be going back and forth when recommendations have came forward? staff has said, this, this is what they think we should do. And if 3 or 4 words gonna change something, I mean, why do it? So that's just sort of my concern. So I just think we stay the course right now. And if we need to make some tweaks, we do that as we go, especially with it being a strategic plan. We can always tweak that as we go along. So that's just sort of my opinion.
I guess just even thinking of history in this room, sometimes we've changed a single word in a CDO, or sometimes two digits in a number, for example. So, we could kind of follow that and have a CDO for this. Commissioner Myers?
I just want to clarify that we are talking about be proactively reform. Is that the line, Commissioner Holt?
Correct.
Oh.
And so in the current strategic plan, this is proposing to slightly modify and to sort of condense and combine and reduce language. Current strategic plan, number B, goal area 1B says, proactively reform systems of accountability to reduce the jail and supervised population and plan for transition and returning residents. And for some reason in this version that got reduced to recidivism rates, which, as I pointed out in the work session, is only part of what the initial goal of this was getting at. And so I'm actually not asking for us to change our existing strategic plan. I'm asking for us to keep that part of it the same. Noting that in addition to recidivism, there are issues like length of time one stays in jail, or length of sentence, or terms of sentencing, and things like that, that I think we would do well to collaborate with the courts and others on to reduce costs on the county and costs on people in their lives.
So as an editing function, ultimately what we'd end up with is a slight hybrid between the standing version that we are living with today and this forthcoming version. So.
That's right. That's my understanding. So it's not new language, it's the old language, and.
But there is some other new language elsewhere in the document. So
Right.
You've got some new and some old. I think everybody understands that.
Yeah.
All right. And I'd be happy to collaborate on the 3-word strike through.
Me too, Jess.
Thanks, y'all.
CDO, me.
We got your back.
All right, I'm going to work with Commissioner Taylor on it as well.
All right. All right, we're going to move on to item 19. This is the FY25 CDBG Annual Action Plan. And so you see the recommendations here. Of course, just a process phenomenon that I always want to point out. We anticipate these are the funds that HUD will deliver. Sometimes HUD delivers a little less. And so these are sort of the initial recommendations, but of course those could change once the dollars actually flow through from Washington. So, Commissioner Link?
Yeah, Commissioner Fisher and Houle and I met and discussed the CPP funds, but we also discussed this as well and have an interest in finding some alternate fund sources to, particularly to get the YWCO funded, because it has a long tradition of being funded by these funds, and it, it's a really important program and seems to be on a track towards expansion and meeting the needs of another population with even greater needs. So we're kind of putting our heads together on that.
And would heavily encourage you to engage with staff. One of the challenges of this funding area is that only 15% of the total award can go to services. So we're bound just by some realities with the dollars. Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I was thinking about that when we had our speakers come up and talk about that, and was wondering, since, my colleagues here are already working on something, we do have other pots of money that we're actually using for youth development and right now, and we have a program here that has a long history of working and expanding. Perhaps we can work with that other funding in this case when you put together your CDO.
That's what we were talking about, exploring options.
Okay. Great, go for it.
Commissioner Taylor?
I would second those efforts for the CDO, because I was actually, and I'm surprised to hear that the YWCO, I was in the YWCO at Fowler Drive in 3rd grade. So you're right, we do become leaders. But yeah, I encourage you guys to go forth, and I support your CDO.
All right, so more work on this. Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, just another question about the chess and community. I remember there was some discussion about that at the at the work session on that, and I can't remember if that's a new program, if they're getting funding somewhere else. Does the managers have anything that they can share with me on that one? Because they scored just above where the YWCO summer program, they're just like, they're barely a, they're not even a point apart on this. So I just wanted to understand that a little bit.
We can just get back to you.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions on this program? Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I guess I'll just try to say two things. One is I'd love some information from either staff or YWCO on if and how much the school district is also contributing to this, given that if we're not using federal funding to try to move forward on this, and we're using some other county funds, and this is, programming based in a school, I'd like to understand if the partnership is financial in nature with the school district as well as by sentiment. The other thing I'll note is, every year we have more applications and more total funding requests than there is CDBG money to go around. And unlike CPP, which is this kind of brand new thing we're starting up, it's a big transition, CDBG has been kind of the same process for many years now. So, generally I am hesitant to tweak anything that's come through that process because it sort of opens a can of worms that's not the best to open. I think every application is worthy and does good work. So, cherry picking one is something I'm always cautious about. That said, noting the ARPA funding that we're, discussing that Commissioners Fisher and Myers are on the task force for, to me, this seems like a ripe opportunity to deepen the meaning of that partnership with the school district by using a small portion of that funding, perhaps in collaboration with them, to move this program forward. The question I have, though, maybe is whether that's appropriate to put forth as a CDO for this agenda item versus maybe something that we should explore as an agenda item separately. If not like under new business, then maybe in the next agenda cycle. So I'll just offer that up as an alternative procedural way forward, although the goal I'm on board for. Thanks.
Maybe we could engage with staff and just talk about what some of those prospects could look like.
Commissioner Houle, I just want to make sure I heard you right. Did you say the YWCO and CPP or CDBG? I'm sorry.
I've tried to throw around a lot of acronyms correctly, and maybe I mixed two of them up. Which part of my, what are you?
CBDG.
CDBG, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's where they came through, yes.
And Commissioner Culpepper.
So this is for this summer, summer camp. So we got to be careful not pushing it out too far because we're in April right now.
I would highly recommend that whatever composite we're going to come to, we come to before May 7th. Yes. Good point. Good point. Commissioner Myers?
We have so many different pots of money here, and I was looking for the message that was a reminder about when the Boys and Girls Club request for money was. I believe we got something just the other day.
April 25th.
When is that due?
April 25th.
Okay, and do we know if the Boys and Girls Club, if the YWCO applied for that money? They're in the process. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I just want to respond to Commissioner Houle about the school districts involved in the Girls Club. When I was there, we offered up the facilities for nothing. They used the facility, and that was sort of community benefit from the school district. Now, I'm not sure since I've gone, has that changed, but I do know they offer the facilities up at no cost, if I'm correct. At least when I was there, that was the case. So that's probably the in-kind thing that school districts were doing now. I understand where you're coming from with some funding possible on top of that, but I do know they did the in-kind with the facility use.
Thanks for that. Appreciate that history. All right, some more work to be done very clearly. All right, we're going to move on to item 20, and this is the FY25 Home Annual Action Plan. And these are, of course, separate funds from HUD for housing purposes. And you see the recommendations in that outline here.
Consent.
Consent, yeah.
Everybody okay with this on consent?
Yes.
All right, I love it. 22 consent. All right, 21 is a unique program, at least to my eyes, and this is a HUD preservation and reinvestment initiative for community enhancement for manufactured housing, both for repair and purchase. Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I was interested in that, and I was just curious, again, you could find this out later. I know I'm putting you on the spot by asking you this, but what kind of zoning allows manufactured homes like this? If you could get us that information, I'm just curious about that.
Consent.
We'll have that follow.
Okay.
Everybody okay with this on consent, with that question forthcoming? Okay. All right, item 22 is approval of the ARPA homelessness funding recommendations, and you see those outlined here in those kind of major categories. We talked a little bit about the sliding scale with one of the programs.
Consent.
Commissioner Myers?
I did have a question, and perhaps we can find this in between now and then. Commissioner Davenport was talking to me about the Above and Beyond Home Care Cooperative, and I was just trying to understand that. I love the idea of getting people who are homeless into employment and such, and I'm just wondering, like, a little bit more about that program and how many, because they're going to be training, their approach is to hire and train 5 CNAs for the Above and Beyond, and perhaps they're working with another organization to do that. The CNA training, how that's going on. And I believe, so I am curious about that, and I was curious how many people are already employed in that program, in Above and Beyond.
Would you like staff to do some?
Yes.
research for that?
Follow up.
They're going to follow up, not now, right, not now. But
Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, so I would like to leave off consent. I respect Economic Justice Coalition and the work that they do, but I do remember that during the CARES Act funding in 2019, we gave Above and Beyond Healthcare $40,000, and this is a for-profit entity. And just the logistics of hiring homeless people from the street to go into people's home to care for people, it just raises a lot of red flags, and there's a true need in our community, and I think, especially in the African American community, and we can do a much better job in helping those in need than this concept. So I would like to leave off consent.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I'm just giving them another question to look into, because you reminded me of that, Commissioner Davenport. The hire, train, and certify 5 CNAs. Again, I am curious about that as well, having interacted with various individuals in the homeless community lately, and how one would, where the recruiting's going to come from, how that's going to work in terms of the hiring. I mean, I think it's wonderful, but it's from my work with training people, it's hard to train people sometimes when they're not homeless, so I was wondering what the strategy and support would be for those individuals.
Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I guess I just want to note that also in our homelessness strategic plan is the fact that 4,003 people in the last year experienced homelessness, which is about 3% of our population. And I don't think all of them meet the sort of caricature of someone who's like unhinged and unable to do care work. So I have to imagine that an organization, EJC or otherwise, would probably bring on people who are capable of doing the job that they're tasked with doing, for a whole variety of reasons, including the goals of the program and the reputation of their organization. So I appreciate the desire for more information, but I do hope we'll move forward in funding this program. There are a lot of people, actually most people who experience homelessness are not people with severe behavioral health needs. And even some people with severe behavioral health needs, if they're partnering with the right organizations to get treatment, can do really good work.
Just to amplify Commissioner Hoole's comments, encourage everybody, if you are online, to go to today's New York Times webpage. There's a wonderful little sort of series of portraits in a multimedia piece, including some video vignettes with folks in a bunch of different cities who've experienced homelessness. And it's the kind of normal stories that we've all heard about, where somebody's rent increased and then they moved into long-term hotels, and then the hotel rent went up and then they had to move into a van with their kids. So I want us to center our thoughts about the homeless population in that breadth of experience. So, Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I would argue that there are quite a few folks who find themselves homeless after transitioning from caring for a partner or a parent who, when they pass away, they no longer have a home. So there are plenty of folks who find themselves homeless but have a great deal of experience in caring for elderly folks or ill folks. So I think this could be a really good opportunity and could find some folks who actually have a little bit of experience with this.
All right, we are going to move on to item 23. 23 is the recommendation from LRC related to invasive plant species. We heard somebody speak to this at the podium. I moved into a home on Pulaski Street 25 years ago that featured privet, bamboo, kudzu, and English ivy, and I've gotten 3 out of 4 of them out of my yard. So this is real. Commissioner Myers, as chair, would you like to offer any comments?
Oh, just a very little, because our commentator here earlier who made a comment, Laura, I believe, did a really good job of summing this up. The recommendation, I think it expands it clarifies an invasive plant and what that means, and really ties it in with this list, the Georgia Invasive Species Council invasive plant list, which I really like, because that means that it's the list, it will change as needed in here. I think down below in the ordinance, there's also a discussion of the containment of invasive plants, so that we have someone for our if there are issues, that we have rules about them here. And I believe this also, I thought one of the more interesting things was, as well as how it would, what was it, changing our planting list. So perhaps Assistant Manager Jones could speak to that. How we were going to do that, and perhaps the education part as well?
So if we have any invasive plants that just so happen to be on our list, we're going to remove them. Also, some robust education from the Sustainability Office and our code enforcement officers. And I would add, if I might, that code enforcement will be a challenge. So one key feature here is that if someone has an invasive plant growing on someone else's property prior to tonight, this ordinance would not be in effect. This post voting actually, post the voting ordinance. Voting meeting, the ordinance would be in effect. So anything that's on the ground now, it's a non-conforming use, if you will, would not be in effect.
Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support this going on consent. Grateful for the work on committee. Our discussion on this went a lot of places from October through March when we were discussing this. But I do just want to raise up one point that I raised up in LRC as well that's not captured in this. So invasive plants are kind of broken into 4 categories, if you will, and you can think of like categories. Category 1 is sort of the most aggressive or harmful, and Category 4 is more like we're kind of watching it to see if it's going to be a problem, right? And that gets updated by a body that we don't have to worry about. We can just refer to on an annual basis. And so our code is now going to refer to that and specifically look at Type 1, and I think we said like part of Type 2 or something. Yeah. Because the Type 2 is broken into 2 sections or whatever. The point here being there's a whole bunch of other species that are considered invasive that under our current code, developers can get credit for as conserved canopy or could even plant intentionally. I didn't see the need, especially given the impetus for talking about this at all was bamboo and we were going all over the place, to belabor the point in LRC. I'm not sure if and when it needs to become a priority here, but I just want to note for colleagues that we're currently giving canopy credit for species that are considered invasive, and we're currently allowing developers or whoever to, by right, plant things and get credit for their planted canopy with species that are considered invasive. And so while it would be a more complicated update to our code, it might be worth considering at some point down the line in consultation with the Sustainability Office or whatever, whether it makes sense to expand the definition of invasive specifically for things related to new plantings or existing plantings that developers get credit for. I don't think anyone has any appetite to go around policing all the different trees in people's woods.
But certainly as we engage with the planning office, oftentimes we have these code updates, and so that may be something for future work. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I'm really happy to see this come forward. I'm master gardener, plant nerd, and constantly battling invasives in my own yard. But I also sit on the tree council, and we have mentioned what Commissioner Hull is speaking of about, seriously aggressive invasive plants that get credited in planning and zoning. So maybe that could be a charge for the tree council, is to identify those species and maybe develop some language around our planning and zoning code as to, what species are credited and not credited and are even directed for removal before development.
Definitely have some further discussions with planning.
Yeah, I mean, and I have a little bit of confusion here. I mean, coming from a master gardener's perspective, invasive to me was always defined as any species that is not native to this particular area. But then there are aggressive invasives that are actually, your bamboo and your privet and your ivies and stuff. So I'm kind of confused about the language. Is there a different set of definitions that allow species that are not necessarily native but are not considered invasive in this context?
Well, if I might, Mayor, the plan is, if you approve this, that staff will work to update the tree species list, but work with the tree council in an advisory capacity to bring something up back to you for consideration.
Okay, so it would be clear that there's a definition of an invasive plant that might include non-invasive plants that might include non-native plants.
Well, I can't speak to how a definition will read in the future policy, but I think species will be outlined, good and bad.
Okay, yeah, just as long as there's some clarity on the definition of invasive that might also include non-natives.
So prior to the LRC's work, there was not a definition in the code.
Uh-huh.
So the definition in the code is Category 1 alert, Category 2.
Okay.
That's the definition that we're moving forward with. And you asked why, Category 4 would not be included. Some just do more harm than others.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, Bermuda grass is also on that list.
Yeah.
And I would say that's kind of how we ended up here, because technically bamboo is also an ornamental plant, and that's how, as y'all well know, that's how it kind of got included. So with definitions, I want to be careful right now to say it's going to be this way or that way,
Yeah.
but we'll work through all that.
Well, there are also varieties of species that
Sure.
are less aggressive than others. So, I mean, this could get real complicated real quick.
Not everything's just good or bad. So, Commissioner Davenport, I saw your hand.
Just a personal comment that during our budget season, we need to be really generous to code enforcement, because it seems like they're getting a lot more responsibilities.
Commissioner Hool?
Thank you, Mayor, and point well taken, Commissioner Davenport. I guess wanted to offer to Commissioner Link's point, and I think it'd be great if the tree council could take this on. There's a big difference, I think, between requiring developers to remove species and giving them credit for planting them, if that makes sense. Because it can be quite expensive to go through all of your conserved canopy and remove things, especially if we're thinking about things like Bermuda grass. And that could probably run pretty counter to our affordable housing goals. So I would caution against requiring removal of type 3 and type 4 species, but I do think it makes sense for us to not give credit for them, if that makes sense, as a kind of compromise.
So, given all that, okay on consent, or knowing that there's going to be some future work on the planning and zoning front?
Consent. Great.
Consent?
Consent.
Okay. All right, next item 24 is the update for the ACC Gov space allocation study. So you see the scope of work there in the document. Questions about this?
Hopefully consent. So
Move it on.
All right, consent here. All right, item 25 is to approve additional funding for the alternative response team. We funded the bulk of this year and found out we came up a little bit short, so you see about $155,000 shortfall being made up through two funding sources. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions for staff. The first is, this is going to get us through FY24, but is there anything in the proposed budget, this might also be for you, Mayor, because you got it after the manager, to keep this program funded through FY25, or is that something that we'll have to take separate action on as a commission in our budget deliberations?
Yes, thank you for the question. So this is one of those initiatives that was started with ARPA dollars. And as a matter of fact, the commission could supplant what's being suggested with the general fund contingency with ARPA dollars to help in this particular year. In my draft budget that I provided to the mayor and spoke to you about Big Rocks, the $500,000 or so of projected costs for this program is not in my draft budget. And y'all, budgeting is just an exercise in priorities. And of course, the employees and the benefits and the life cycle and things like that took the priority here. So something for the commission to consider in your deliberations on the budget is whether you want to put some general fund dollars towards that or ARPA dollars. I know ARPA is a conversation we're going to be having a lot of as we try and we recognize the imminent deadline at the end of this year. So if you were interested in continuing the program, you can either do general fund or ARPA. But I would say that if you're going to begin transitioning some of these initiatives from ARPA to the general fund, then you might want to go through an exercise in prioritizing and projecting because there, the Boys and Girls Club, there's some other initiatives out there that it's not clear how we will fund it. I think the term was fiscal cliff. So we get to the fiscal cliff and what then? And so I think that's part of the discussion we should have. But Commissioner, no, it is not in my draft budget to the mayor.
And in my work on it, I'm down to about half a dozen moving pieces that have yet to be nailed down. So I hope to have a draft of it to this body probably tail end of next week. Further questions?
Yeah, one other question. The MOU process here is overseen by ACCPD, and given that this is the idea behind the alternative response team, which is different than our co-responders who are partnering with officers to go out, is that they're a non-police crisis response that also does a lot of kind of wraparound social work. So I'm curious why the development and the oversight of this MOU is housed in PD instead of the fire department like we do with the EMS contract or HCD like we do with other social contracts like the street outreach team, for example.
Well, I think the simplistic answer is we usually house contracts nearest the function in the government that's closest to what's being described, i.e. the EMS is with fire. And so in this case, because they were working in concert with the police, we had them administer that contract. Of course, any department could administer that contract, but if it's in the wheelhouse, we would expect them to understand the accountability. I also understand that one of the deliverables associated with this was data that would help inform the public safety function. So it's been with police up to this point.
Okay, I guess I'm going to ask to keep it off consent just because I kind of want to follow up with staff a bit more. But in my understanding, serving as this body's representative to Advantage and talking with Advantage staff, and then also going back to when we were initiating this proposal in my early days on the commission, this is a team that's seen more akin to a medical response or a social work team rather than a police response who's more dealing with like crime or someone who might be a danger. I'd be interested in seeing whether it might make more sense for this to be overseen by a department that has more of that medical bent or that social work bent rather than the crime prevention bent. But anyway, we can talk about that later.
At least just thinking about the adjacencies of all the things we do. Obviously, our hope is that sometimes if somebody calls 911 and the alternative response team is the kind of appropriate responding entity, it's still going through 911, and so probably somewhere in the public safety cluster may make some amount of sense.
Sure, but to that point, someone calls 911 and we dispatch an ambulance or a fire truck, right? And fire department oversees the EMS contract, so.
Commissioner Culpepper?
Do we have any data on the success of this program?
We've not received the data, all the data that we need to at this point. So I think that's still, there's some, we had a meeting recently about that, clarifying the expectation on the data, the types of data, the frequency of the data. And so I think we're on the right path now.
All right, we'll leave this off consent and move on to item 26. This is a change in the ACC Gov Code of Ordinances regarding the Deferred Compensation Board, just to clarify some roles and responsibilities. Input on this item?
Consent.
Yeah.
Are these ordinances?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, 27, slightly different, but again, kind of minor modifications with the pension board.
Consent.
Okay. And then finally, 28 is just kind of modifying the terms of donated leave through the donated leave policy.
Consent, I think that's a great idea, Mayor, and I think it was invaluable when we had that UGA, so I think it's a great idea.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any further input on that item? Consent okay for 28?
Yes.
All right, and at 7:26, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, and a motion from Commissioner Fisher, second from Commissioner Taylor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The sun is still shining.